Day, so we have decided to warm up the show with two of my favorite Reese's, and we'll get going from there.
It's also there's a whole bunch of stuff. We have million, as Jeff says, we have a million questions and answers that we want to give you, but it's not a normal Sigler in Place, but there's so many fun things to talk about. So I need to say, Nelson McClintock had a birthday yesterday. My dear friend Kristen Wozni had a birthday yesterday. Mike Natazi, who's in the chat room right now, has a birthday today, as does our good friend Julie Press has a birthday today too. I hope you guys are having a great time.
All right, here we go. Going to the main cam in 3 and 2 and 1. Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Hi, guys.
Happy Hump a Reese's Day.
Well.
Yep, because we've got Reese's Pieces today.
You don't have your Reese's shirt on, but that's okay. It's still orange. It's still orange. We got plenty. We got plenty of Reese's.
I'll jump over for a second. Jenalia says,
of course, Jenalia, do that, because there's going to be spoilers of everything in the Siglerverse. So the right answer, if you're worried about it, is just to jump off right now. But love you, Daryl. I'm going to ask your question
on Twitch. So, Ret Nuttum, I think. Hello. Yes, go ahead, babe.
We also have a few people who are recovering. My good friend Alicia and my good friend Will. They both are battling COVID right now. They are quadruple vaxxed, or at least triple vaxxed, I think, in Will's case, and doing well. But COVID is coming for all of us, you guys. So if you haven't yet gotten COVID, like me and Scott and Alicia and Will, be careful, because COVID's coming for all of us. And the more you can do to protect yourself will also protect you from long COVID. I also have to say, you guys know I love my brother to death. My brother's name is Jude Stenson. He often joins the Facebook chat. Oh, you put on your Reese's shirt.
It was, when you think back, it was, I would say, 30 years ago. And we were warned. We were warned about COVID.
Yeah.
Gloria Estefan. Yeah. She said, the code is going to get you.
Oh, well, yes. Akil, yeah. Oh, my goodness. I hope you had a great birthday. Or I hope you celebrate your birthday once you're recovering from COVID, and I hope you're doing really well. Also, I replied to your email. Reply to it and send me your tattoo. I need it. I will say, you guys know my brother Jude, who's often in the chat room on Facebook during Sigler-in-Place. He separated his shoulder on Sunday night. So I am sending him well wishes too.
All right. In this episode, we got to pimp the usual. Oops, we go back to the main. We sign up for the newsletter. Do it. It's smart. Of course. It's a smart thing to do. There's news coming soon. You'll like it.
So many of the questions that we have tonight are like, what's coming after the first crypt? What's coming after the rookie adult version, all that. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll know before everybody else.
And sign up, send SIG text to 855-955-5095. You get delicious, delightful, low-calorie text messages sent to your phone to let you know when I'm about to have a whole bunch of calories, because always beating on camera is the way that it goes. Yes.
Speaking of always eating on camera, as Scott talks about the other things that we're going to talk about, I will tell you that today is I Love Reese'S Day. So all through the show tonight, we're going to have
different kinds.
Reese's Pieces.
Why? Yeah, it's going to be great.
Reese's Fast Break. There's so many things to eat.
There's going to be a lot of eating on camera. And speaking of, this has nothing to do with eating on camera. It's a bad segue. But we have Steve the Iceberg Rickybird throws a little party.
I mean, after 7 hours, he's got to eat something on camera. He's drinking that whole time. He should have. Want to see my impression of Steve Rickybird? Sure.
Here we go. My impression of Steve Rickybird. Let me get character.
Oh, Lord.
Hi, I'm Steve Rickybird. And when I've been on a Zoom meeting for 7 hours and I need to eat something or I'll pass out, I have Reese's Take 5. It gives me all the nutrients and energy I need to keep going for that next 7-hour marathon Zoom.
How does that taste, Steve?
Reese's Take 5. Let's find out.
He hasn't spent a ton of time on... on the happy hour, just a little bit of time on the happy hour, but Steve is definitely at least this cool. He's actually a lot cooler, so come on and join us. What's
Slightly stale pretzels, caramel, peanut butter, and coated in wonderful chocolate made in Hershey, Pennsylvania. That's right. It's American made. Reese's Take 5, have one, and then why I take 7. There you go. That's me. It's me the whole time, you guys. It's been me. They call me a chameleon. They say I can imitate anyone. Facial expression, carriage, aura, all of the things. So there we go. Okay, that is it.
That's very sweet, you guys. It's very, very sweet.
It's got that proper peanut butter saltiness. It's fantastic, fantastic. Let us go and take a look at what's going on in the book world. Not a whole lot, you guys. Except for this right here. This is Shakedown, the Crypt Book 1. I actually updated the title today. That's about all the work I got done. I also decided it's going to have to be 125,000, not 100,000, not 107,500, not 110, not 115, not 120,
But
probably
also-
125,000.
But also,
Yep.
not 190. These things are important.
Well, I'm not done yet.
Fair. But we're shooting for 125, and we have the blessing of our publisher, so that works out.
This means we're about 68% done with the first draft, although I
Hey,
ran
Jude,
into
nice to see you.
a huge a plot snag today that I have to figure out. There we go. All right. That is it. That's all the non-Q&A news that we have.
So we talked to you guys last week about a couple of things. The same things are true this week. So I'm going to tell you at the head of the show. I'm going to tell you throughout the show 2 things. Today's show is also 90 minutes long. We forgot to tell you in advance last week. This time we did tell you in advance. It's 90 minutes long because you guys have so many questions about the Siglerverse. That's number 1. Number 2, this entire show is spoilerific. You saw Genelia Verdich Harris join us at the beginning of the show to say, "Hi, love you guys. I haven't read everything that I want to read before being spoiled," so she hopped off. We're going to try and do that throughout. If it's something that we haven't been talking about a lot, we may remind you that there are spoilers afoot, but every single thing out of Scott's mouth and my mouth during the show is potentially a spoiler for a book you haven't read. So if you hear that happen, if somebody asks about Infected and you haven't read Infected, know that might spoil you and maybe hop out and, note how many minutes in we are and then come back in 10 minutes later, something like that.
Boz is in the house. Hello, Boz.
Hey, Boz.
We
Nice
missed
to
you too,
see
buddy.
you.
All right, here we go. First of all,
Hope you're feeling well.
courtesy of Steve Rickenberg. Do you know Steve Rickenberg is a pitch man?
Oh my
No,
goodness.
wait. No, wait. No, wait. No, wait.
I gotta have the whole camera here. You guys
No,
are
wait.
not.
Wait. Trust me on this. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. What did Steve prepare for us?
You guys are not ready. Steve is not only so good, he's such an important part of Empty Set. He is absolutely on our side as junkies. Here's my proof. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, we're gonna have some outtakes from the Stonewall's recording process. They are not flattering to me. They do not put me in a good light. They do not make me look rational, kind, sane, or like I ever bathe or shower or care about anybody but myself. You know how they edit things in real, what do they call that when they just turn the cameras on? Real life TV?
Reality?
Reality TV, a reality TV show. But the other thing about Steve Rickenberg is this. Hi, I'm Steve Rickenberg.
Oh, Lord.
And when I spend all day long editing Scott burping and farting into the microphone and apologizing and yelling at everyone, including himself, it can get a little taxing. That's why I have Reese's Sticks. I'm pronouncing it very carefully. It's Reese's Sticks. That's right. I have these, and let's find out how they taste.
And here's the thing. While he's opening
Mike.
that and eating it, I'm going to say this. One of the great good things that Steve does for us is he insists on fixing tiny little audio hiccups. And one of them is a double S like that. Reese's Sticks.
Because if you don't say it right, you're like, hey, do you like Reese's Sticks in your mouth? Yeah.
And he'll,
Yeah, I like Reese's Sticks in my mouth. Yeah.
And you know what
delicious.
doesn't play in Peoria? Iceberg does not like that. Does not
right.
like that.
Here we
and
go.
He makes us fix it.
Now
which is
we're
the
going
right
to the chat
answer.
room. We can watch all your reaction live. Here is the outtakes. These come fast and furious, you guys. So
Oh, you guys.
while we may play them again at some point in the future, listen up. It starts out. Here we go. I'll watch the
Do you
volume.
have your drink? Because you're going to need
I
your
do.
drink.
I do. If there's a volume spike, I'll stop it and come back and fix that. Here we go. Actually, we're going to do this camera over here, babe. So I can monitor this. Shit. Fuck. Hold on. Well, I got... shit. Goddamn stomach. Fuck this shit. What happened to my voice all of a sudden? This is the literary genius I sling about. That's what it sounds like in the booth, you guys. All right, here we go. Got some more of them. Yeah, I'm sure you're going to clip this, Steve. It's okay. Saccacorn hasn't revealed her name. To fucking who? What? The fuck does that mean? Give me a second. I don't know what the fuck is happening. That's
Sorry.
good enough. That's me trying to get into the killing voice after 2 or 3 or 4 hours of recording, just trashing myself. Because let's continue. The bridge of a key ship was a big metal sphere around which the command crew clustered. Fuck me. Hold on. I got clustered one sentence above. It's like I only know one word. No, it's still the... I got gas going like crazy, Steve. This is terrible. This is so bad. What is going on? How did this get through all these people? It's a train wreck. No, there's no point. It's just, I don't know how I keep doing this over and over and over and over. So basically at that point I had quit writing. I was out. I was like, I'm sure there's a couple jobs I could do out there. It's very frustrating. Steve, fortunately, caught that on camera. That's great. Here we go. Over again. Wait for that missile that's going to kill us all to go by.
Which no one can hear.
Watch it hit us right before we get to the end of 153. Zen. Damn it. I'm being very repetitive about this 5 years. I guess not. We'll just keep rolling. It's bad writing, but...
So many planes.
Well, that's a really tough... Oh, that's a fucking tough sentence. Give me a second here. That's...
Oh, you can hear me?
I'm a fabulous performer. Mayday, Mayday, Aya said, in her best impression of one of the galaxy's most famous people. This is Somalia Midori aboard the inestimable class yacht Zeta Death. What did I say? Okay. This is Somalia Midori aboard the This is Somalia Midori aboard the inestimable class yacht Zeta Death. Inestimable.
Here's the crazy thing. There's a fucking sound cloud that exists.
I know, Fudge. No, the same word? That's right. All right, here we go. Steve, I share this gift of gas with you. Very spitty this time, which is very good. All lubed up in there, Steve. One of the big crab machines. Does that sound right? I know that sounds funny.
It does. You said it actually fine the first time. The second time you said crab machine.
Crab machines. Ugh, I'll never write another book with another person ever again as long as I live. This is so hard. That's tell her to stop that.
That's Reesie. It's Reesie Day.
We did? Steve, we're waiting for the dog to stop digging in the bed right now. Slid against the wall. What the fuck? Oh, God, I wish I knew my grammar better. Outside, the tsunamis and volcanic islands spawn... What? Hit pause. What the fuck does that... I feel like I used to be much better at this job. Fuck would I even put that in there for? It doesn't make any sense. Steve, this is page 479 of 513. I warn you in advance. I've got the toots. This could get ugly. A rocket ship driven by incalculable. In that far distance, a jet of magma shot into the air. A rocket ship driven by incalculable. I'll start from a rocket ship. Driven by incalculable.
Jason, no, he's not.
Right. And now to honor Hutch, we're going to play the most famous soundbite in all of podcasting, in the entire history of podcasting.
Hang on one sec, just in case people don't know this. So you heard Scott try to say the word.
Inestimable.
Inestimable, which is easy when you're saying it just as the word. But as you will see, these storied, educated, talented writers / narrators have trouble in sync doing this. So you heard Scott do it, and the same word. Let's hear.
This is J.C. Hutchins. You can listen to his Seventh Son podcast. I believe that is still out there. You can go buy his books.
And it's lovely.
He was the co-author of The Stone Wolves, and also texted me yesterday like, "Hey, do you know any female-fronted metal bands?" I'm like, I gave him a giant list of stuff to go.
Hello,
this is him trying to record and screwing up this word. It's one of my favorite things.
Inestimable. Our inestimable. inestimable, our inestimable duty officer.
Hello, new
Whoa,
world.
hey.
That's the next
All
one.
the boys and girls.
Apparently,
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I don't know what that crack. Steve, did you hear that crackling in both the sound bites? I don't know what that. I've never heard that before, but there we go. Okay.
So
Try to turn off fan in case it was that. All right, so here we go. Now, ready?
yeah.
Okay, that is all the preamble. The inestimable, I thought it'd be clever. The inestimable preamble is now gone, and now we're moving on to the questions.
So we have 2 video questions that we're going to start with.
we do. Okay.
I believe
Back
the
over here.
first one. I hope they're in order, and if so,
I have to go to video. Yeah. So they don't introduce themselves.
yeah, I think they both introduce themselves. And
Okay,
if
here
not,
we go.
I can tell you who they
Here
are.
we go. This, of course, is
This is Super Ben. Yep.
Super Ben here. We know about Star Wars, The Godfather.
You know what? I'm gonna pause. Give me 1 second. Here,
Sure.
talk to the people. I don't know. I must have a.
He's going to reload that to see if we can do it well. If not, I can ask the question that Super Ben is going to ask. But what's neat about we have 2 video questions today, and we have both had the pleasure of meeting and hanging out with both Ben here, who you see, and Darren, who has come to several Sigler Fests, and they're both lovely. They have both come join us and other junkies at junkie events. And are the same sort of fans that we are. And so he has a pretty brief question that I can ask if he can't do this, but
Let's
it's
try it
only
again.
15 seconds. So let's try again.
Let's try again. We're back over here. Okay.
Super Ben here. We know about Star Wars, The Godfather, Aliens, maybe Firefly for some of your inspiration for your story writing. What are some more recent ones, maybe TV, movies, video games, that have inspired you for some of your more recent stories?
So, most of the inspiration I get is structure related. Like you watch how people thread things together, and that's what I latch onto. So, I'd say very recent is we're starting a rewatch of the MCU because my darling wife has never seen most of the MCU, so we started
I've
that
now
out.
seen 6. Up until last week, I've only seen 4 things in the MCU.
So we're getting that going, and that's an inspiration. The MCU is very good at, showing you cute little things or interesting bits of information and working them into dialogue. So like when they show it to you, it's not like, look at the watch on this guy. Isn't this crazy? But you see the watch and the watch is knowledge and the watch is going to come back later. And then they go on with it and you get all of the character work. And then at some point the watch shows up and again in a place you didn't really expect it to. That kind of thing is it's pretty deft. The Marvel gets bagged on sometimes being simplistic, but I mean they're superhero movies, so it's a different cup of tea to start with, and they're very good at that kind of threading. I would say Daredevil was one that was I guess more of an influence. What else, babe? Think of anything else?
So I think Super Ben didn't mention this, but we know him in real life, and he knows this about Scott, that Scott loves Battlestar Galactica, but he didn't mention that. And that's relatively more recent than the other things he mentioned, Star Wars and Star Trek and back then. And that's another one. But Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, up until 1 hour into the finale, really moved Scott and his efforts and way of storytelling. And you'll see a lot of that, I think.
I think Ben was asking since that. Is there anything else we've watched that I've been like, holy shit, that's amazing? Dexter?
Yeah, Dexter. There's a lot of things that are recently moving him to watch that are more... He is looking more at character-driven things. Like, especially during Story Smack, we have watched things that are big set pieces, like Top Gun, but have character interactions. And I think that's a new thing that we're doing recently and that he may be benefiting from. And right this very minute, we're watching a lot of submarine movies and stuff.
A lot of submarine movies.
We just watched
lots and
Greyhound,
lots.
which is not technically a submarine movie, but it was so good.
Tom Hanks, Greyhound, available on Apple TV only. It's the only place we could get it.
It was so good.
And it was pretty tight. It was pretty tight. Now that's a movie where there was no pretense for a B story. It's just, here's a guy, he's the captain of the ship, this is a crappy situation, and trying to get through it nonstop. So it was a very different approach to storytelling, not something I can get away with right now.
Yeah, and Reagan, we haven't started watching the new Dexter because we have sort of research things that
I'm
we're
terrified
watching right now.
I'm terrified.
I was about to say two things. We're watching research sort of stuff right now, but also Scott really loved the Dexter as it existed and is a little afraid that it won't fall through. This or it won't come through. This is Darren Wall. He's got another question, and we'll go.
See if we go.
You guys all, if you've been to Sigler Fest, you've probably met Darren.
Hold on. Can't get the play button to show up. 1 second.
There we go.
No. There it is.
Darren, long-time listener. My question to you is, what was the process with regards to the Stone Wolves? Did JC come to you with ideas? Did you go to him with an outline? How much of the book was decided before either of you started writing?
All right. We'll answer that right now. I would like to point out that A knows she's supposed to be looking at the monitor below the camera, but she had to look down at her Facebook monitor because it was a bigger screen so she could see more of the dog. Am I right?
Exactly right. I had to see the doggo. And I'm not the only one. The iceberg was all doggo.
Doggo. I already forgot. How much did we plan? So the Stone Wolves goes back many, many years. And that was in my, I had an idea. I was going to have other people co-write novellas with me and be able to give you guys a whole bunch more stuff. We'd have more stuff to sell. I'd be able to, draw attention to my good writer pals who are good writers, and then also, bring some of their audience over. It's kind of a win-win thing. We found out that the writing process itself does not work very well for me. I'm not good at collaborating with people on stuff that's my original IP. So it took us forever and ever and ever to get out the 6 novellas that we have. I mean, a very, very, very long time. But Hutch was one of the first people we went to, and he did an outline for the novel, and I went and made changes. And so he outlined the initial crew and the ship, and he knew the bad guy, and he sort of fleshed out like here's the concept. You have to get in these points. He came out with an outline, and then it would be impossible to determine kind of who did what from there. Like the bones of Beans was Hutch, but that got changed and all the interaction and like I say, so Hutch had the main character, the main ship.
And what's interesting about this is if you listened to it, any characterization that you heard, so any accent, if you recognized Lulz was Christopher Walken, as we mentioned last week, or a take on Christopher Walken's accent, those things never existed in the text. So if you bring anything to your enjoyment of the story that was based on characterizations in the audio, that's all Scott. But in reality, the other thing that's important to mention is Hutch is a story editor for the GFL.
Yep.
We hire him and pay him to look overall at the GFL because he understands everything, and he was actively working on sort of story editing the whole GFL at the time. And so I think it's very hard to parse out because at the same time that they were writing this story, they together were choosing to divide what we used to think of as GFL Book 6, which now you guys know as The Gangster. When in its first draft, it was like all of GFL 6 and like half of GFL 7. And that all happened then too. So it's really hard to parse out.
Yeah.
But I would say, unlike the first story in Title Fight, where each chapter was either Matt Wallace or Scott, this was an integrative thing more than anything else.
And I can't even remember how the ending came about. I think I knew I needed that ending to set up things in the GFL. But it's, impossible to tell at this point because it was so iterative. We went through it a bunch of times. And then at some point I was just taking too long and getting it back to Hutch. And I'm like, okay, I have to finish this because every time I would send it back, once it got set in stone, sending it back started to add different facets. I'm like, no, I can't have that.
And then
That's
life
sending me off in a
happened
different
too.
direction.
Yeah.
Life happened too.
Yeah.
He had a kid. I mean, stuff like that, All right.
I know. You want to get into some of the other questions?
Yes, I do.
Those were the only 2 video questions that we had, but we have a bunch of process questions. As I mentioned last week was very much about the Stone Wolves or
This is a good
actual
question we can ask, yes.
characters. Go ahead and ask Akil's question.
So this, Akil said was the Stone Wolves originally the killer, and it was. And then we, as the publishing world changes, we're like, okay, well, this is a black man on the cover of the book, and it's going to call it The Killer. I'm like, that could, that we can do that if we need to, but if there's another way to go about it, let's see if we find another way to go about it. And then we're going to change it. So you can see the guys, in restraints or in cuffs. We're like, so black man on the cover in cuffs of the book called The Killer. No, that's not going to work either. And then we sort of went through, and actually I think this is a fun fact. That's like the Stone Wolves was something I developed off of that because the Krizatu was Hutch's name, and he just made it up. And that's like the actual pronunciation of the word, and the translation in English is. So I came up with the translation, the Stone Wolves. I'm like, this sounds pretty cool, and we kind of changed it around there. So then it gelled so much with the story. Like I didn't even remember that. We did that like 3 years ago.
For sure. And we have a related question to this. Let me find it because it's worth asking this way. Chat for a second while I find it.
Thank you, Akil. Yeah, it's one of those touchy things. It's like we're not going to self-edit something if it's particularly important or germane to the story, but at times there are optics, there are current situations in politics, there's things you're like, let's just leave that. If we can find an equal solution to that, let's leave that alone. What are you gonna say,
and not add. If there's people trying to make something out of nothing, we're not going to give them the fuel to do it. That's the other part. So Joe, we'll start the actual questions with this one because it's relevant.
Right.
Joe Walter emailed in and asked, not that it changes anything, but I had it in my head that Quentin was partially built on a young Tom Brady. And when racist terms are thrown about in our society, it is usually from white males. It wasn't until this novella that I'm picking up on the fact that Q is a black man. How did I miss that? Or is it just a new revelation to challenge my racial biases? And if so, thank you.
Because it's one of those things. I thought it would be very interesting to do the series where it is a post-racial black and white, brown, yellow, pink are usual shades. That's post-racial in that perspective, but there's an enormous amount of racism against people with blue skin and bleach white skin and heavy G, people with a completely different body type. So I knew that we had a black quarterback who was extremely racist against other skin tones. And that was a slow play to kind of stretch it out and see how it would go. So it wasn't overt. And really the color of Quentin's skin is mentioned, I think, only when his sister shows up. Like it's not spelled out. It's in there a couple times very subtly, but it's because it doesn't matter to the position. And number two is there was an intentional, other than describing the size, I wanted to leave Quentin open to your imprinting. So like I'm describing this human wrecking ball of a quarterback and do all these things, is so amazingly talented. And then you, if you are a sports fan, you imprint something. If you're a sci-fi fan, you imprint something. Some people might think he looks like Captain Kirk. It's all over the place. Mm-hmm. Hold on, I had something for this. Darn, I forgot what. Whoa. Who is he based on? This is the best part.
This is my favorite part.
This is the single best part about this job, because people discover the GFL all of the time. And when they discover the GFL and they are in their NFL fandom, they all think the quarterback is based on a quarterback who is sort of at the height of their power when they discover the GFL.
So who was Quentin based on?
Well, I will say this was written before Tom Brady was even in college. Even in college, you guys. So going way back.
Didn't have that quarterback right angle jaw yet.
No, this goes way back. And then there's been Cam Newton was one. When Cam was playing, when he was balling hard, everybody thought it was Cam Newton.
And just in case, because there's lots of rookie fans who do not watch the NFL, what color is Cam Newton?
Cam Newton's black.
And who's the other one?
And, oh, gosh.
Dante Culpepper.
Well, that's who it's actually based on.
Oh, that's what I thought you were saying.
No.
Oh.
No, what I'm saying is people imprint a quarterback at the time they're watching it. Dante Culpepper wasn't even in high school. I'm sorry. Cam Newton wasn't even in high school when we started writing this thing. So it's Dante Culpepper because he was, I'll do this. Boop. Then you have to bend over. It's Dante Culpepper because of when he started in the NFL, I think there had been one starting quarterback bigger than him. And that was like something back in the 60s. He played a couple of games. Like he was a giant. He was a giant size. He was big enough to play tight end, and he was a quarterback. and that brought a whole different world to the position. And that was very compelling for me as someone who's been watching football for, 45 years. And then so we took Dante Culpepper's size, I'd say Dante Culpepper's accuracy and his ability to run with the football and just run people the fuck over, and combined that with Jim McMahon, who was a non-Mormon quarterback at BYU, and they brought him in to play football and nothing else. He did not fit in culturally at all. He was a good old boy, showed up with a chaw in his mouth in a place where you're not allowed to have chewing tobacco of any kind. He didn't give a crap.
Or caffeine.
Caffeine.
No stimulants of any kind.
And Jimbo was pounding beers and being a college kid all through his time, and then he went to the Bears and became the rock star that he was.
And do
the
we
rebel.
think that maybe Jimbo had a little bit of trouble fitting in the first few months?
Yeah, you can
like
assume.
Quentin.
You can assume he had a little, but Jim McMahon also was a lights out talent at the position, and when you are a lights out talent at the position, there's only so much discipline coaches will do. Frankly, if you've got a guy who's going to win you 3 games almost on his own, you are not going to bench him because he didn't put on a tie. It's just not going to happen, and you still see this to some extent in the NFL. So the NFL. Now they've given out fines a lot more, and that started with McMahon. The big fines for personal behavior started with Jim McMahon, but it's still very much a league that lets people fly their freak flag however they want to, within a lot more context now. But
And I will say this, which I mention a lot, because this question I'd say comes in maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year to info@EmptySet, where they say, wait a minute, all of a sudden Quentin is black. I will say, if you have a hardcover of the All-Pro, please look at the hardcover of the All-Pro, because that's Quentin on the cover. And that is actually a junkie. His name is Chris McWhite, and he is an African-American man, and that's his hand on the cover. But everybody kind of...
Not the All-Pro. That's the one with the trophy, right? Is that
No,
Chris
that's
McWhite,
the
the
MVP.
trophy? What's the one we did the photo shoot for?
The photo shoot is, it might be, I think it's the MVP. Well, actually, it's 2. You're right. It's the All-Pro and the MVP. Both have black men holding the trophy, or on the cover. And one was on the East Coast and one was on the West Coast. But I think the MVP that he's talking about, with the trophy hoisted in the air with many sentient hands grabbing on it, that is... I think that's Chris McWhite.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
then in the All-Pro cover, where it's the jersey of Quentin wearing, that's in San Francisco, and that is also a black human being. And everybody just glossed over that. It's very interesting.
It's literally on the cover. Let's go. We got to talk more about a far more difficult skin color conversation to have, and that is the bleach white of Yitzhak Goldman. Jared Duncan says, race, meh. I wasn't surprised by that as I was by the fact that the passive milky goodness Goldman was such a badass. Yeah, that's been super fun to watch Goldman, and he's been there all along. He's been he's been doing all this stuff all along, but now it comes out.
We have a million questions, so let's get into them.
Let's go.
Barbara Youngbauer asks, Scott, will you please indulge us and pander to the fans? Fander, if you will.
Fander, all right, I like this.
By having old Bess, the T-Rex, chomp down on some of the bastardly Vermata. I want to hear bone snap, smell the blood as it flies, T-Rex teeth and all those tiny hands. Rip up those evil sumbitches to bits.
We will see what happens. I can neither confirm nor deny at this time. Senator,
love that.
Senator, that depends on the definition of crunchy and tiny hands. Senator.
Exactly. Chris Hughes. We got so many I'm just going to plow through until we stop.
Go.
Chris Hughes says, what is the meaning of the ship's name, the Oleron? Is there a story behind how it got its name?
Okay, we'll talk about the Oleron in a second, but first we have, I think
That's
first
okay.
time
Go ahead, yeah.
anybody from Costa Rica has chimed in, so that's great. If I forgot anybody from Costa Rica, sorry, but
Andres will answer your question right now.
Andres says, how do non-human kicker, running backs, and quarterbacks work? I like the dynamics if there is a quith running back or a key kicker. The hand waviness of how things work in the GFL is specifically set up so that the skill positions are humans, because the skill positions are usually the main characters in any kind of football story.
Sure.
You focus on quarterbacks, focus on running backs, occasionally focus on a kicker, laces out Dan, that kind of a thing. So to have an alien in those positions, that would have been too much work. So what are you doing?
I'm opening the...
What? No, you can't. That's not how we do it. We do it like
putting
this.
back the fast break. He was just answering
Hi.
a question.
When you're writing a very difficult, detailed book combining alien races, science fiction, football, racism, gambling, and organized crime, sometimes that can get a little tiring. That's why I like to have a Reese's Fast Break. A fast break for me means more energy, means more writing for you. Reese's Fast Break. Okay, we're done with our sponsors. Let's go. So the skill positions are human, and it's sort of offhandedly explained. The key are crappy kickers because they've got lower to the ground legs. They have bad accuracy. Key of bad accuracy. Sklorno is running backs. There's a reason they're not running backs because they would last approximately 4 plays. They are not incredibly durable creatures. That species leads the league in deaths on the field every year. So putting them in any kind of position where they're going to get beat up a lot is a no-no. And then I also, let's see, human kicker. Yeah, Quith running back. And Quith ball carriers, their hands are not particularly well suited. They got the pedipalps up by their head, and then they've got the big paws down here. While they can do all kinds of fine motor skill work, and they can make computers and all the other stuff, a ball in their hands, they tend to fumble a lot. The key tend to fumble a lot, so they're out. They can't catch the ball for crap. They fumble a lot. So that explains why the game that was invented by humans tends to favor the human physique in particular areas that are not just size, speed, and strength. Okay, let's go.
The fast break is not for me.
What was the question?
The question from Chris. Wow, that's terrible. The question from Chris Hughes is, what is is terrible. See?
It's chocolate covered chalk.
Yeah. Okay, I feel better. What is the meaning of the ship's name, the Olerin? Is there a story behind how it got its name?
Okay, vamp for a second.
We'll vamp for a sec. You guys, listen. So far we have Reese's Sticks. These were delicious. The Reese's Nutrageous, delicious. The Reese's Take 5, delicious. The Reese's Fast Break, a lot, not for me. We have Reese's Pieces left, and then we have a surprise the FDO doesn't know about, which I'm not sure is going to go well, but we're going to figure it out together.
We'll go with this. A lot of times when I find a cool name, I'll just Google stuff and like, what does this mean? What's this? Look up this word in 15 different languages. A bunch of that coming up in the crypt. Olerin is literally the ruler of the heavens, is the name given to one of the three manifestations, the supreme god in the Yoruba pantheon. Olerin is the owner of the heavens, and in this manifestation, the vital energy of Olerin manifests in humans, which is the life force that runs through all living things. So there you go. That is the answer to your question. I wanted to find something super cool, and I found that name, and that is how the Olerin came to be.
Okay, Robin Taylor asks, I often listen to audiobooks or podcasts in the shower or the bath. How many people do you think listen to your voice while they're in the nude?
At least 93%. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. How can you hear this and keep your clothes on? So it's okay. You guys do what you got to do.
Hey, Brian, nice to see you out there.
We don't need proof. Pixar didn't happen is irrelevant. We don't need to know.
And
Go do what
Scott
you got to
Pond,
do.
Nice to see you too.
Hey, Scott Pond in the house. Go do what
Jared,
you got to do.
nice to see you too, of course. Adam Waugh says, I love all the timelines and stories in the Siglerverse. Looking forward to what the Crypt series will bring us. As for the crew of the Olerin, will there be any more background stories for Zan in future books, or even like a short story like was the creation of the Prowat? We saw the creation of the Prowat in the Petra Prowat stories.
Let me go over that, break that down a bit. Zan has a major role in GFO book 7, 8, and 9, if she lives long enough. I'm not sure. Zan is a major player in the stories still to come. The Olerin factors in heavily in the stories still to come. It's possible Beans has entered the household dog category, where he will not be killed under any circumstances.
It's going to be hard.
I can't promise that yet. I cannot let him off the hook just yet. And then what was the other question? The other part of that question, babe?
It was, hang on. As for the crew of the Olerin, will there be any backstory for Zan, or even a short story like there was for the creation of the Prowat?
Yeah, tons of. You will find out a lot about Zan's backstory. You know I's backstory. You know Beans' backstory, although there's a big gap in it. So you know those things. But yeah, you'll know Zan is the one big mystery, and you'll find out more about her. Killian will continue to be a mystery, although if you read the Crypt series, you will come across him in that series.
We are continuing the Stonewolf questions for a minute, and then we're going to get into sort of content and creation questions. But from Nicholas Burke, is Peaches the robot who is featured in the Stonewolves a Rocked-by Portath Silverbug?
Yes.
Yes. Also, within the GFL, do regulated teams return to their own previous conference, or do they take over the place of the newly promoted team that is taking their spot?
No, they go back to their conference. So if you're in the Key Gridiron League, and you advance to you make it through the Tier 2 tournament, you make it into Tier 1, and then you get relegated, you go back to the Key Gridiron League. That's always the way it is. So it can get interesting if your division, your Tier 2 division, is really, really powerful, and you've got 4 or 5 or 6 good franchises. You can get 3 or 4 of your franchises up into Tier 1. But it's cyclical like everything else in pro sports. You'll have a run, things will fade off, players get old, management makes mistakes, you pay the wrong people the wrong amount of money, you draft poorly, all that good stuff.
Daryl Hare says, was the term shuck used as a replacement for stronger words when the Rookie was adapted for young readers? And this is I'll answer this if that's okay with you. This
Sure.
is a long and storied piece of Siglerverse history, and the answer is absolutely yes. Scott tried to put the Rookie into the App Store at Apple, and it had curse words in it, and he got super righteous and upset because 50 Cent's entire entire albumography was there.
They would not let the book on the thing.
They would not.
And 50 Cent Get Rich or Die Trying was #1 album, and Rosemary's Baby was the #1 movie. So
and when he replied, the woman who wrote back to him was like, "Cool, I'm the book person, and I was an elementary school teacher, and I'd love to talk to you." And she talked to him, and his parents are teachers, and his brother is a teacher, and she was like, "I just want to be able to share this with readers who can't." Who aren't really into sparkly vampires or whatever. And I think that's actually Scott's term, sparkly vampires.
That's my term.
But like, she was like, please make this sports novel about sci-fi something I can share with students who are not engaging with other stuff. And it really moved Scott. And we didn't know each other at that time, but I'm super glad he did, because that has been a huge, huge difference in our outreach, so to speak. And it's been a really good thing, because I don't know that there's a lot that are for kind of sporty kids, mostly male sporty kids, in elementary and junior high and stuff like that, that they can engage with in the same way that people can engage with or could engage in the before times with Harry Potter or Twilight or things like that.
I always felt it was not aimed particularly at male sporty kids, because if you're a volleyball jock in high school, and you are obsessed with sport and that's your main thing, you might not want to read might want to read these other categories. And if you got to read something, well, at least here's a book about athletes like you busting their ass trying to get better at a thing. So that's what we're going for. Yeah.
So back to the Stonewolves. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Waldron asks, what made you make the activation for the Cruncher devices activate on hand action and not by remote or voice or code? I guessed because it would be copied too easily. However, is there any other reason? I just can't imagine the Abernetsia having the right limbs to activate a Cruncher, and also the person activating the Cruncher would have to hightail it out of there after activating.
Jeff Hexer says his daughters are hooked on the books. That's fantastic. That's the objective. It's voice activated. It is voice activated. It's not, the hand signals are just to get the device to open up so that they can get in there and work on it. And it's a complicated dabbing type pattern, because it's not something that's ever going to happen accidentally. So because there is a reason these are in cargo containers that you will see eventually when this happens. And it's spelled out pretty clearly in the Stonewolves. And so the hand signals open the thing up, allow people to get in and work on it, seal the thing up. And then it is, I believe it is the Bhagavad Gita, is it? I become God, the destroyer of words. I forget, but there's modification on the Oppenheimer quote. I have become God, the destroyer of worlds, to activate the actual bomb. There are remotes. Just because he didn't use a remote doesn't mean there are not remotes, and there are timers. So it's a bomb, man. It's a bomb in a movie. There's gonna be a couple ways to set that some bitch off.
Jason Lombardo has two questions. The first one, is there any piece of military technology used in the final galactic war explained better in a previous non-GFL titled book?
No.
Secondarily, what are the next 5 priorities after Shakedown First Draft is completed?
Okay, so Shakedown First Draft is completed. Priority number 1 is GFL Book 7. Third draft, hopefully the final draft. There's that one. Then there is a project that we are not allowed to mention yet.
Project to be named later.
Project to name later. Actually,
I agree so far.
I gotta call my agent about that.
I know.
Project to name later. Then invariably, we believe it will be Shakedown second draft, and then we go into the finalization of GFL Book 7, and then probably I would guess Shakedown final draft and the beginning of Crypt Book 2 will be happening all at the same time.
Yeah, I did this. I went through the 5 next things after Shakedown, and I agree completely with him, except I also agree with this one, which is a little nebulous. If Shakedown second draft is the final draft, which it may or may not be, or GFL 7's next review is the final review, which it likely will be, that will change things. But I can tell you definitively, we have GFL Book 7, we have the Crypt stories, and we have this project that we can't talk about, which is so far a one-off project that will probably happen. At least he will write it this year. I don't know when you'll see it. But those things, and then after the project we can't talk about in GFL 7 is just more Crypt, is what's happening next. For the next 2 to 3 years, it's mostly Crypt sprinkled with other things. And I know if you've been around for a long time, you've seen us go through this, where either it's the GFL cycle with not a lot else sprinkled in, or it's the Earth Core Fitzroy cycle with not a lot. That's how that sort of works, and that's what it looks like right now. We are planning to kind of stay, as we told you guys a couple of months, or maybe a month ago. We're sort of thinking of this as the PU VMD set, where we're kind of going to stay locked in and stay safe and get our books out, his books out, and get that done, and then move on to other things.
And for those of you listening to the podcast after the fact, Sean Dyer in the chat room came up with the quote, which is, "Now I become death, the destroyer of destroyer of worlds." And as Chris Grawl in the chat room also said, that is Robert J. Oppenheimer, and who is who's going to eventually destroy some worlds. All right, next question. Let's go.
Jeff Eckelberg asked, "I love the Stone Wolves as much as all the other stories you've graced our ears with. I can't wait to find out if the elders, spoiler alert, elders from the Generation trilogy have anything to do with the planet killers from the Stone Wolves. Is there a connection with their evil-mindedness and current designs of the planet-killing device?"
There was a lot packed into that question. I will say that I can't answer some of it, and then there's other parts of it that I also can't answer right now.
Okay.
Meaning I can't answer any of that right now, so go to hell.
So I'm going to jump into the chat room quickly because Ollie Kirby asked a good question. I'm glad you 3 got home safe, and I'm glad you had a terrific trip. Congratulations. I'm so excited that your friends and family got to meet the baby. Ollie actually asked, after Book 6 was the first GFL book with no... Oh, I'm sorry. Book 6 was the first GFL book with no gameplay. Will GFL Book 7 have gameplay?
Sort of. So the first 5 books of the GFL, each book takes place alongside of a season of Tier 2 or Tier 1 football. Book 6, that did not happen, as for reasons as those of you who have read it. And then Book 7 is a partial season. I won't tell you anymore. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but there's some crazy stuff that goes on in GFL Book 7. And then GFL Book 8 is like, what? I'll tell you guys right now. What? Wait. What? Wait. What? Yeah. That's your reaction to GFL Book 7 right there.
Brian asks, "I'm so excited for this next pass. Sorry if you covered it before, but will you be bringing back some of the guest readers like Mer Lafferty?"
No, we're not bringing back any guest readers. No.
Nope. That time is gone. That world has moved on. That's not how we work anymore, and it's always logistics to coordinate anybody, even a narrator like Ray Porter reading our books. That's all more work, and we have enough work and not enough time to do it that anything we can do to reduce some of that would be great. Now, that doesn't mean that Scott won't read any more stories, or I won't read a story here and there, or we won't hire another editor. But we're not going to do that sort of stunt casting, for lack of a better word, without
We don't have time.
without a really, really important purpose.
All of those audio dramas you listen to, like Christoph Laputka's work and
Which is
We're Alive and all that stuff, that is an enormous amount of work. And we do an enormous amount of work too, but so much of our work goes into the finessing of a full page of text type work. And in having done both, writing a 600-page novel is a more time-intensive process than writing a 60-page screenplay. So the people doing the full cast audio dramas have a certain bandwidth that we don't have, and then they get crushed by that, because that is an enormous process to bring people in to read, or to have people read remotely, bring it in, have that all engineered, trying to give directorial comments on it. It's very, very difficult stuff. So we don't touch it. And unless it's a GFL novel right now, I'm giving that off to a A-list pro reader, because they get it done correctly. They get it done quickly. They tighten it up. They send it off to Steve. We don't do the editing anymore. Steve gets the editing done correctly, gets it done quickly, and we wind up having more time to make original IP to give to you guys.
Okay, we have Scott Miller says, I was hoping to enlist some help tracking down the name of a short story that I remember hearing a long time ago. I remember it being about a spy/stealth spaceship.
What?
Or
I don't
listening-
know.
Or listening post.
What?
Where the crew is activated from cryosleep to begin their mission.
Oh.
I think the story was paced by the accumulation of heat in their vessel, and that correlated to their likelihood to be detected by the enemy. My gut says it's from the crypt era, but that is a guess. Is there a Sigler story like this, or did I subconsciously write and file it away as something you would write? Does it currently exist anywhere? Do you know what this is already?
Yeah, it's in Washington, D.C. That's the short stories of Washington, D.C. And we're still at a formulative moment in the Shakedown series. I'm trying to pay close attention to a lot of things about. We're trying to keep it as real to physics as we can, and still tell the story, and then come in with some crazy hand wavium that basically, I'm not ignoring physics. I'm providing a reason that the physics we know do not work, and that is all with the goal of trying to build this series out as the very World War II in flavor, which is World War II dogfights and big ship battles. That is Star Wars. That's what they set out to do from the beginning. Battlestar Galactica is a World War II aircraft carrier in space. There's something very particular key about that. Go back to the question. I got lost.
It was, okay, hang on. I'll have to do this better next time. I was hoping to enlist some help tracking down the name.
I got it now. So the Washington, D.C. is paying much closer attention to physics, which is stealth is, from my limited understanding of physics, stealth is basically impossible in space. And if you're sitting there going like, well, what if they do this? And what if they just turn the engines off? And what if they just have like, it's not how things work.
Yep.
The things you can do on a planet to be stealthy do not apply in space at all. So there was a lot of work in the Washington, D.C. to try and like, okay, well, how could you make a stealth? How could you have a ship do stealth?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, I don't know if that work is going to go into Shakedown, going to go into the Crypt series. We may just ignore it, or it might still come around. I'm not sure yet.
And I'll say two things. Shannon Bethany said, isn't that the tank? And I thought the same thing. I thought it might be the tank. And then there's the story with Gzit.
Yeah.
That story, which is also part of this time frame, which is very much that. Grizit gets woken up, I think. So,
Yeah.
But I can't remember what that story
Pretty
is
sure
called.
the one they're asking about, because it deals with the heat so much.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
keeping crew on ice. So
Yep, for sure.
keep crew on ice. The ship's full of ice, and they have X amount of time before that heat-absorbing material goes through a phase change and will no longer absorb heat. So the stealth they do have is very limited. They have a limited window to do the thing. And this, the way the story works now, in some ways eliminates that, but we'll still have to see. All right.
So this is a super quick question. Joseph Stronger asks, can we expect a mature or a YA version of the Crypt? And I'm going to answer that absolutely a mature version. There's 200 years between the crypt and the GFL. So if you can remember what your ancestors said 200 years ago and whether or not they cursed, let me know. But we're going to make that an adult version because that's better for the story and that's better for us. So it's an adult version, but thank you for asking, because we actually talked about this quite a lot. If we move into the future and it's YA and they're sort of related, and we decided by the time the people who are reading these young adult stories grow up to need the experience on the crypt is definitely a mature experience.
This will never be in a grade school class ever. It is basically the marketing at this point, as far as I can tell, is the crypt, all the triggers. That's it.
Yep. Exactly. Absolutely. The crypt, all the triggers.
Yep. Next one.
Whose idea was it to repodcast the OG version of The Rookie?
Was it my idea?
Yeah, John and I brought up, we weren't sure if all the versions of The Rookie had been podcast, and Scott thought of, we get questions literally at least once a week, if not 3 times a week, about whether or not they could hear that original story because they've been told that story exists. We'll never sell it. There's never a way that we can sell it and not confuse the marketplace, so we figured this was a good interaction right there.
Yeah, all right.
Lisa Brooks asked 2 questions. The first one is, who will be reading Shakedown?
Yet, as I mentioned in the chat room, we are we've been talking to Ray Porter about this for a while, and he either he is a fan of my work or he knows how to keep his clients happy, but he says he enjoys reading the work. So we are working on, but that is to some degree out of our hands. We can direct that, but that is up to the publisher. The audio publisher will be handling that, and hopefully we can work with them. But a big part of the changes that we have made, and I've made, like the print on demand stuff and getting rid of all the future novellas and things of that nature, is shoot, I lost it again. Is to reduce the amount of work we do.
To reduce the bottleneck on you.
Reduce the bottleneck on me. So we are relying on the publisher to do what publishers do, we will be like, we want this, he will go for this, he wants to do it, you guys need to make this happen. If they can't make it happen, then it's up to them. It's up to them from square one. It's only a matter of how much they want to listen to us, and when we try and push them one way or another.
Yeah, and we absolutely, as did Ray, sort of say we would love this, but we have to do that through the publisher who's publishing the crypt. Second question from Lisa is, will you two do an audiobook together, even just a short story? And if you want, I'll answer this for now.
I'll ask, somebody asked when the rookie adult version starts. It starts on May 28th. Episode 1 is May 28th. Good.
Okay, so Lisa Brooks' second question was, will you two ever do an audiobook together, even just a short story?
Have we?
I don't think we have. We have both contributed to Bones Are White, along with Ray Porter and a couple of other people, but it was just each narrator reading their own story. I don't think that we've thought about that yet. I'm sure it's not out of the question. We have a story idea or a screenplay idea, I'm not sure which, that we've been talking about on and off for a while that I think we'll do together. I don't know how that will end up, but certainly if that comes to fruition and it's a short story that has a male voice and a female voice, I think that would be a lot of fun. But we've never even thought about that, as far as I know.
Are things dropping out, you guys? Michael Gray's having trouble getting the signal, so if you guys are dropping out, hopefully not, because we strip the audio out of this, and then we use that to use this Sunday's episode. So, but again, we have talked about doing an alternating viewpoint, male, female, whatever. But that's also an enormous amount of work. That's pretty much the only full cast stuff that we will ever do is just me and A, because we can each go in, do 3 or 4 characters a piece, record each other, send it off to Steve. But that's the only way, because then we get consistent sound quality. It's the background sound. When the background sound changes, you may not realize it, but when the background sound changes, because one guy's recording in his kitchen, one lady's recording in her closet, it just takes you out of the story, and it destroys the suspension of disbelief. So we can control it ourselves. We might do that. That's it. All right, next one.
Now we're on. Last week I mentioned David Wilkinson has questions about many things in the Siglerverse, and these are somewhat practical, somewhat process-driven, and somewhat character-driven. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions. If you guys have questions in the chat room, please ask them. If we can get to them, we'll do that. If not, we'll add them to our Q&A and answer them in the next few weeks. First one is, one of my favorite things about Scott's writing, particularly in the GFL series, is how he slips in random quotes from movies and TV shows into otherwise normal dialogue between characters. My absolute favorite is the quote from Better Off Dead in either The Gangster or The Stone Wolves. I listened to them back to back and I don't remember which was which. Tentacles, NT, big difference. I have to know, what is Scott Nay's favorite of these sneaky quotes?
I would, like 20% of Pulp Fiction dialogue is in my work in one way or another. So I don't have any particular favorites, but there's a bunch. There will be a Drake Weir leaving in the Crip series. So.
I will tell you, no holds barred, what my very favorite one is, and this is a special thing, so you may or may not know this. So when the paperback for Infected was published, the paperback, it came with a sneak peek of the first couple of chapters of Contagious at the back end. And it might have been just the first two. It might have been the first three. I'm not sure which. But in those first three chapters that were published in the paperback only, first printing of the paperback of Infected, one of the things that happens is when Perry is thinking and talking about himself, he actually says, "That made me angry, and you wouldn't like me when I'm angry." Yeah. And it's not in Contagious. The editors took it out of Contagious. They were like, "Nope, that's too hokey. You have to take that out." And so if you have a first edition paperback that has that excerpt of Contagious in it, you will see that line in Contagious that isn't in the printed book. And I love that very much.
Can you check your phone real quick, see if it's Wi-Fi's off? We're having the audio is okay, but we're having some video stuttering going on.
Yeah, it was. Well,
okay.
It is now. Again. Let me double check that I did that. Yeah, that's still off.
Okay.
When an audiobook is being recorded for one of your books, excluding the ones done in-house, how much direct contact or collaboration is there between Scott or A and the narrator reading the book? And I'll start while he's typing. I will say it sort of depends. Ray Porter is a friend of ours. I talk to Ray Porter a lot. I had the benefit when I recorded the audiobooks that I recorded for Casey Alexander. I was in studio while Ray Porter was in studio doing other things, so we became a little bit closer friends. But Scott talks to them all the time. And I think as whenever he's done talking about that, doing whatever he's doing, he can tell you about his experience with Bronson Pinchot and Aliens Phalanx, which was really charming for me because we don't know that actor at all. And he was so down to earth and so human and so invested and so excited to be part of it, I think.
That long URL I just put in because I included all the search information like a dummy. That is Nanoshock, which A did the audiobook for. So we were talking about
Thanks,
that.
Yeah.
You guys want to hear A do an audiobook with an enormous amount of cursing.
Oh my God, so much cursing.
So when doing the audiobook, I don't have a whole lot of interaction. Once they start doing it, they usually ask for pronunciation guide, and then they'll send back more questions of pronunciation as they go. And then I try to talk to the director and the voice talent if possible, just to say, I'm here, text me, I'm here 24/7. If you have questions, why not ask me first and then go with whatever you want to do. And then I make sure I'm available 24/7 to the people reading the book. So if they have any questions on pronunciations primarily or character or motivation, or if they want to get into the deeper acting stuff, I am there to answer that. And Bronson Pinchot had way more questions than anybody else. I would get, they recorded at odd hours and I would get texts all the time, and eventually started to be able to chat with him on the phone and go over stuff. And he would talk about, well, I think the character means this by this. And most of the time the answer is like, you're the one interpreting this work. That sounds good. Other times it'd be like, no, that's off. Here's where I think they're coming from. And then very little with Ray. Ray Porter's just kind of a machine. Like he's just extremely good at his job. Goes through the whole thing. You get a question every now and then, but not too often. So and those are the two primary guys.
Yeah, and I'll say also, Ray is a very big sci-fi reader and sci-fi fan. So when it first came to be possible that maybe Ray would record with us and Scott and Ray talked, Ray was familiar with Scott's work already, and that's is a huge indicator that he sort of gets the vibe of Scott's work. And his work, again, is very much like Scott's. It's very sort of pop culture relevant. It's very present. It's very real time. It's very cinematic. And I think he does the same thing. So that kind of works out.
All right.
Okay. I'm checking to make sure there's no questions in the chat room.
Okay.
But in the NBA and NFL, if a player is traded mid-season and their old team goes on to win the championship that season, the team owner can choose to offer a championship ring to that player, even though they are no longer on the team.
Right.
This has led to a handful of times where a player was traded and they went on to play his former team in that year's championship, a la Don Pine, and essentially guaranteed a ring no matter what. Obviously, with his history of throwing games, there's no way in hell that Greedock would have offered Pine a ring. But did Greedy extend the courtesy to any other players that were traded away during the Kraken's championship season?
I don't know. We can assume if they wanted to pay for the ring themselves, Greedock would have. Greedock would have.
Answer.
He would have. I will offer you the opportunity to own this ring, but you must pay for it yourself plus a 5% finder's fee.
Finder's fee for me. Also, if you don't know, sometimes when Squeaky is being kind of a jerk, Scott talks. You like talks in Greedock's voice.
It's a very similar Greedock voice.
And that's very, very much what Squeaky
does
do.
less. Mother, I
like
noticed you are
finder's
sitting
fee.
on the couch with Father. He should move immediately, Mother. I should be on your lap and no one else should be in the room. Also, Mother, would you kindly get me a treat? Thank you.
True. Okay, with Scott being such a huge Lions fan, I've always been curious why he didn't make the Kraken's colors blue and silver. David, this is a great question. Let me finish it. It's such a great question.
All right.
I'm a diehard Broncos fan, and if I were to write a series about a fictional football team, I wouldn't be able to resist making the team have orange and blue as their colors because that's what I want to cheer for.
Come here. Greedock the Splithead heard her call, heard her name, and came running. So, orange and black were the colors of my high school team. So I was a wrestler and was a football player, and that I'm sure that is why that dark, rich orange is my favorite color. And so much of who I became as a human being and as a grown-up was forged in the furnace of all that time in the wrestling room, all that time in the football practice field, and and the pep rallies and all that awesome small town stuff that I like orange and black. Those are my favorite colors. So the team was going to be my favorite colors, which are orange and black. Silver and blue, go in your own goddamn Super Bowl. Anytime. Any friggin' time, buddy.
Any moment of any day.
Any moment of the day.
This is a question I'm sure has been asked a million times, but is there a general ETA on GFL Book 7 and 8 and on?
To quote pop culture a little bit, no, we don't. We don't do that anymore. We will give you when the souffle is ready. We will put it on the table. And we're not saying that to be artistes. We're saying that because we have fucked up so many promised deadlines that we simply do not promise deadlines anymore. GFL Book 7 is in second draft. Edit is complete. I have to go through that. We will go through that when Shakedown is done, and then we'll get it finished depending on when this mystery project shows up. And that's the situation. There we go. Next.
I will also say this. Once we are actively in production, that's the difference. That's the thing. We don't talk about it when we think it'll happen, but once we're actively in production, we'll talk to you about that. And they may slide from there, but we're never going to spring on you, oh, hey, this whole new GFL book is available today. We may do that with little things, but we won't do that with a whole novel.
I forgot. I have written a screenplay called Super Bowl C many, many years ago, in which the Detroit Lions win the Super Bowl. So my fandom is worn on my sleeve, just like anybody else.
Oh, right. This may be a dumb question, but in the GFL, what's the difference between the terms race and species? They seem to be used pretty interchangeably. When race is used, it's defining a subset within the species. Is this just an example of the word race and racist being used in a colloquial way in the future?
They're fairly synonymous in the future. Species or race. There are no sensitive, politically correct words in GFL too, which are not ones that we have right now. So people kind of fumble around with that But for the most part, race and species are synonymous, although the most cumbersome word in the GFL is speciesist because it's different from being a racist. So racist is you are prejudiced against one particular segment of a species. Speciesist means you hate all the species, but if you're a speciesist, you're also a racist too. So there you go.
Exactly.
That's everything went on.
I want to point out that Peter Bryan is in the chat room on Facebook. Peter Bryan is a mythwit. He is one of the two mythwits. He's fantastic, and he's in the chat room, and he says orange and blue Polytech baby.
Okay.
Let's see. Do all vehicles travel at exactly the same speed in punch space? Meaning if ship A punches into punch space 10 minutes before ship B, and they are taking the exact same course, will ship A always arrive the same 10 minutes before ship B?
Unclear.
David went back and finished the Generations trilogy before he sent in these questions. He reread the Generations trilogy and the Stone Wolves and the Gangster before he sent in all these questions. So these are from the Generations trilogy, I think.
Okay.
How many different species and which ones made it to Omioken before the birthday children? Obviously the Springers and the Velen, which he believes are the Queth. But if I recall correctly, it is hinted that there's archaeological evidence of other species below the remains of the Velen species. But then it's not mentioned again.
Yep. We will never know. There's maybe one, maybe two, maybe three. It's been an ongoing process that ties into the broader Siglerverse in a way so deep and intrinsic to the finale that I can't even begin to give you any hints at all.
But I think that is sort of the point of that, right? Like I read that in the Generations trilogy, that idea of seeing evidence of other, like archaeological evidence of other species and other lifetimes and other life cycles. That is the point of that. This has been going on forever and ever and ever. In my lifetime, for me to be able to understand forever, it's been happening my entire idea of existence.
And when you're talking about the can't tell you anymore. Can't tell you anymore.
Okay, you highlighted this one.
Brian, says, what are your thoughts? Let's go to chat so people can see. What are your thoughts on the trends of writers hiring teams of beta readers and continuity teams, dialogue editors, etc.? Do you see the value of such collaboration efforts? Does it water down the story? We've been doing this for years. We have a continuity editor, the continuity czar, Big John Viscara, who has been, I couldn't tell you how long he's been working for us in that position, but it's been a while. And then we don't have dialogue editors, but we have actual book editors who will make suggestions on dialogue. And we have an enormous, depending on the book, the beta reads can be extensive. For any of the modern day Siglerverse stuff, there's a couple of military guys, there's the editor, if there's cops involved, there's a cop. It's, there's doctors, we have doctors, we have biologists. So our beta readers can go anywhere from like 4 to 7 people. So we have teams that involve continuity editors. We have teams that involve highly specialized beta readers. So we do that. I wasn't where other people did, but I also wasn't where other people didn't do it. So
before we move on with questions, I have a surprise for my husband.
All right.
Are you guys ready?
Yep.
I'm not sure he's ready.
All right, let's see what's up.
I'm not sure it's a good surprise either. I have this for you.
Hi. Sometimes I get surprised. Can I just open this up?
Yeah.
What?
It's I Love Reese'S Day.
Is this a Reese's snack bag?
I found a Reese's snack pack. I'm sure it's gonna be. Hang on. I'm sure it's gonna be.
Colliders snack pack. Here we go. Oh.
I would say it's about damn time, but I'm sure it's not.
Hi, I'm Scott. And when I've been spending 90 minutes on an episode of SIGLERinPLACE where we go over the Stone Wolves, I sometimes want to have a little bit of snack. And that snack might look a lot like poop. That snack might look an enormous amount like a big cup of poo. So, but we're going to mix it up. And then it's going to be...
you mix it up. Why wouldn't you? It's called layers.
Dude, woman, don't you correct me on how to eat Reese's.
I don't eat a lot of snack bags. I don't know how to eat
Woman.
it, but it says layered.
Woman, don't correct me on... Hi. It does not taste like poop. It's very, it's a little, not as good as a Reese's cup, but it's all right.
Can I try?
Mm-hmm. You're not going to like it, I don't think.
Is it too sweet for me?
Tastes like they snuck some butterscotch in this sumbitch.
Actually, that's not bad. That tastes like snack packs.
All right, next question.
Okay, it's bad in the aftertaste, though.
I've been trying to tell you.
Okay. Which species were in the mothership's basilisk, goblin, and eel? Wow, that's bad.
Unclear. We may never know. We may never know what species were in those. But yeah, there's definitely some shenanigans going on in the end of that book. So that's great. We had a great time writing that series. Really think the ending was pretty over the top. So if you guys have not read the Generations trilogy for whatever reason, it's a great way to fill your time until we get GFL book 7 out and Shakedown book 1 out.
Randomly, I'm with you. I cannot get behind pudding either. I cannot get behind
Peanut butter pudding.
Blah, 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 blah. How much of technology was included in the signal sent out by the grub? Obviously, the plans for the ship were included, but it seemed like every species had a different weapons tech. Mm-hmm. So were any of the other major tech elements shared in the signal to all species as well, or was it just the ship specs? And other than that, each race was just equipped with whatever they had already developed as use for them.
By and large, it was the ship design, and the ship design supports the engine design. That was the technology that was given. I see we're starting to spot out a little bit too. I don't know what's going on.
I just saw that too.
So that's all they got. Then they had to apply whatever weapons tech they had, and there is a specific reason behind that as well.
This again, I think, is these remaining questions are Generations trilogy related. So if you had any Stonewolves or Gangster questions and you want to drop them in the chat room right now, we can get to those too.
We did just have one. Oh, other characters who were inspired by other NFL players. I would say John Tweedy was. Oh,
I can see him, but
Roman.
But I can't think of his name.
He was a linebacker for the Raiders and not Lyle Alzado. He was a linebacker for the Raiders and for the Broncos. And Bill Romanowski, so was one of the inspirations for John Tweedy. And then most of the other inspirations are just guys I played football with.
Yeah.
You know, like the stoner. You got a stoner who's saying weird stuff, you know, and that's George Starcher. And it just all of the people you see in that were guys I played football with. Some of them were like a combination of 2 or 3 people, etc. So
do any species fully embrace and pursue the signal in the Generations trilogy, or was each ship manned by a sort of extremist fringe group from each species?
I think that depends on the culture on the planet where the signal is received at that particular time. So some of them were probably fringe groups. Some of them could have been an entire planetary economy could be dedicated to fulfilling this, making this ship, and sending everybody out on the ship. So it runs the gamut. And this is a thing that has happened thousands and thousands of times over thousands and thousands of years. So the answer is yes and no in numbers.
Godfrey Lee asks, if you haven't thought about it already, how about a George Starcher novella, maybe a buddy comedy with Tara the Freak and or George's Towel? And he said, please give me a special shout out in the thanks if you run with this idea. We've already covered that we're not planning on doing any more novellas, that would be very fun.
No more novellas. Can't, because the novellas won't be done the right way to fit perfectly into the GFL timeline. And if I can't ask somebody to do that and I don't have time to do it myself, that's it. But a Towley novella would be great.
It would be very fun, right? Why didn't any species build and send multiple ships to Omayokin? Also, why couldn't species send other ships of their own design? Is it just that far away from any other occupied planet that no other type of ship could get there? I mean, the Abernessia have shown that they have the capacity to travel between galaxies en masse, so could they really not send any more of their own ships to Omayokin?
Being a kid who grew up in the Cold War and watching the impact of military expenditures basically breaking an empire who could not keep up. And in the Cold War, the Western nations were able to put a much larger amount of money into research, development, production of wartime material, training, etc. And eventually the Russian economy at the time could not keep up, and they spent themselves into the grave, kind of. So that plays in the GFL, in that these things are horribly expensive to produce. Massive expenditures involved going into this. There's also a side note that the way the ships work, they don't really work well in a fleet conjuncture or work well together. So the only way to get that kind of distance when the series begins is with those particular plans. And the other thing that keep in mind, it's not quite the obelisk showing up in 2001 and the monkeys smacking each other over the head with the club. It's not quite that level of technological difference, but it is several echelons of technology, orders of magnitude greater. So, you're talking about, building the pyramids of Giza in order to get this thing off the ground. That's not something that people can do a lot of outside the one. That's sort of a bullshit answer.
Well, but
it comes down to there's also, if you continue to listen to the series, you will come to understand there can only be one. There can only be one from each planet that's going to make it out. So that's basically.
And you also figure there's and the pyramids of Giza are a great example of this. In any giant project, it gets broken down into smaller things. And so whether or not the direction that the project was supposed to be going is clear or solid, there are project managers on every level who's like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to get my big square rocks from over here because it's 2 cents cheaper or whatever. And things change without you sort of knowing them. So if you think about any time any giant project happens anywhere on this planet, it kind of gets bogged down in the details and maybe bogged down in the grift and things like that. And it's assumed that might happen there too.
And the question of if it was the Key who were showing up in the Infected trilogy, how did they wind up not being dominant and getting discovered at a later time? That's pretty much covered in the timeline. Timeline is also on Siglerpedia, but it was also such a massive expenditure to make those jump gates that it wound up bankrupting the people who made them. And then the revolutions and things of that nature and technology collapsed. You'll see on all my stuff, I play with what I consider the inevitability of a highly advanced society in a particular ecology, particular planet, eventually that breaking down and watching knowledge start to dumb down. And when it dips below a certain level, like the Black Plague, you can wind up losing an enormous amount of technology, wind up losing centuries just to get back to where you were before. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened with them.
So we have a couple more questions. Dirk Peter Smits asks, when you write a multi-book series like the GFL, do you have a main outline on how the story evolves from beginning to end? And is it already worked out from the start? Or is the ending of the series something you come up with later in the process? Is there a difference how this works for you when writing a 3-book series like Infected or the Generations trilogy compared to something like the GFL?
They're very similar in that I knew what the end of the Generations trilogy would be, and I had an outline, and then things happen along the way, and you're kind of course correcting and trying to bring it back to that ending, unless the course changes to the point where you're like, oh, this is way better. This makes way more sense. With the GFL, I've known the end point of the GFL since I think I've been in the 6th grade, would be my guess. Maybe 8th grade, somewhere along those lines.
In the chat room on Facebook, Peter Bryant asks, has anyone asked where the name of the bioserum Gibbeljewants came from?
Nope, made it up. Gibbeljewants. Where did that name come from? Unclear. All right. Dirk Peter Smits asks, is there any progress on the Marie Curie anthology that you can talk about? And I will answer that one. What I know is the anthology is done and it is currently being published in August of this year. It got moved from March to August, but it's on track for August. And you can probably pre-order it right now wherever you get books. My work's done. That's all I care about. Yep. Next.
Let's see. Do we have any in the... I think we're
5
good
minutes
there.
left.
Yeah. I have many, 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 many questions.
Okay.
Kim Hansen asks, your writing has become more character-driven over the course of your career. How did you make this shift and why?
That's an interesting question because I'm not entirely sure. because the plots, especially the plots going over the course of multiple books, have always been what I call the Satanic Seinfeld episode, where you have all of these 5 or 6, 7 different plot threads, and they seem to have absolutely nothing to do with each other until the last 3 minutes of a Seinfeld episode. Then all of them come together, and none of them would have worked without each other. So that's kind of what I do with the book, but that takes an enormous amount of work. So basically, I'm a thriller writer. I'm a thriller writer who happens to use horror and science fiction.
I love that.
So a Stephen King type horror writer is just sort of letting the story go wherever it goes, and he's exploring the horror as it sort of happens, and he discovers it as he goes. Whereas a thriller writer, to get those big whiz bang endings in a thriller, like a movie like Total Recall, not Total Recall. What was the one? True Lies. Old Schwarzenegger movie, Jamie Lee Curtis. True Lies. To get to the end of that, a bunch of stuff has to be set up for it to feel genuine at the end. So I was putting in, 80% of the page count goes into building that structure and embedding all of these highway markers that you don't really realize you've seen. So when you get to the end, all of this bullshit information, you just barrel through it, and hopefully you're on the edge of the seat and you got to finish it. So to get into more character writing, to keep that, you get what you got with Mount Fitzroy, which is just is humongous book, because I took that structure and then started to add way more character work into it too. And we are now trying to bring the needle all the way over to more character work, because in our own consumption of pop culture, Ian and I have had a breakthrough a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, where I just shat on everything. And eventually, as we started to figure it out, it was like, what matters is the characters. That's what pulls you into. That's why you don't care if the phaser array gets reconfigured for the 57th time, and now the Enterprise can suddenly shapeshift and teleport in another dimension. It makes no sense with the continuity of the series, but you don't care because you're really into those characters. So we're trying to come back over to the character side a little bit more heavily. And it's just the organic growth of me as a writer, I suppose.
And he says it that he shat on everything, but recently we've had more granular language around that, which is actually much more accurate, which is he had a very hard time letting go of any entertainment that he thought he could make more clear, more better, more enjoyable to the end user. And even himself as an end user, he couldn't just enjoy it. He had to kind of see if he could make it better for more people. And so yes, it's technically true that he shat on everything, but it wasn't that he thought he could do better. It's just that he thought he could make everything could be a little easier to consume. And that's always the point of an entertainer, right? They want you to love what they do, and they want it to be easy to consume. So we're pretty much done. I have a zillion questions, but I got through most of the ones that were Stone Wolf or Gangster or book related. I have 2 questions of my own.
Shoot.
I know you guys probably know this too. If you follow Scott on social media, he has been quite quiet for the last handful of weeks. How are you doing? I know you have been absolutely hammering 24/7 as much as you can. I think you work probably 8 hours a day and get all your chores and housework done and take care of your pets and wife and all that, and then sleep the righteous sleep of somebody who has exhausted their entire self. But actually, how are you doing with this story?
It's going pretty good. A lot of the questions, like the question about character, that has come into play. The question about, how detailed do I want to get with this alternate physics? Because all of that chews up page count, and page count for that takes it away from the characters. Mm-hmm. So the crypt is pretty much a horror. It's a horror story. It's a horror story that just happens to be set in space, but there's still this foundational bedrock of what I do, which is when you get to the end of the book, things have to make sense. You can't have something pop up out of nowhere that ruins everything that I've already said, that you've already bought into the willing suspension of disbelief. So that part, to answer your question, has been really difficult in this, especially kludging through a first draft. Mm-hmm. And I ran into one today where, something I had messed up a bunch of other stuff. So that can get a little bit depressing to know, like, I made this last week may have been wasted, and I may have to go back and rework from there back to here.
And the reason I bring it up is a lot of you guys know that the reason that Scott and I met is that I loved Infected, and I went to a convention to meet him because I loved Infected, and I'm a big reader. But it's interesting because even now, literally living and breathing with a writer, the crypt is a new thing for me. I haven't seen Scott so mentally exhausted by getting the story right in a long time. And not to say that I never have. If you've read Ancestor, if you've read I didn't know him during Infected, but if you've read Pandemic, if you've read Ancestor, I have seen these hard moments happen, but consistently never so much as here. And a lot of that has to do with now we live together and there's a pandemic, so we don't go out of the house a lot. Agreed. But it's hard if you guys think about it, how often you say you're moving house or you just tried out for the softball team or who knows what, and you're physically exhausted at the end of the day because you're doing something new. It's rare that same amount of exhaustion comes from mental work. And I've seen that a few times in the last month or so. So I wanted to bring that up. And now the most important question of the evening. What is the Reese's winner tonight?
Reese's winner is the Reese's Sticks were the winner. Mm-hmm. Reese's Sticks were the clear winner. I didn't get to the Reese's Pieces yet.
The reward is his favorite candy on earth, unopened. He gets to have that.
The Reese's colliders was also was okay. The Reese's Take 5 stale pretzels. It's one of those candy bars you got to get to when they're fresh.
And this one, whatever this one
that's
was,
not.
Somebody said this was like a Carnation's breakfast without the milk, and I agree.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
It's not good.
It's terrible.
It's not good. So there we go. I think that does it for us.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do have a canine Reese here somewhere, but she's
Mackie. That the original crypt was from many years ago. I'd say 2008.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Maybe I'm not 2000, not 2006. Maybe 2008, 2009. And that is the basis or foundation for what I am creating right now. What I'm creating right now is building on that, making a much more formal structure for it, for the military, for the governments at that time, for all the intergalactic relations, diplomacy, etc. And then putting a bunch of just awful people on an awful ship and sending them out into space to do awful things.
And the last thing that we'll do for Reese's I Love Reese's Day is show you our Reese the Piece.
That's my dog, Reese Pieces. I like him that much.
This is Reese Pieces. You guys know that we love you. We're headed back to work. Scott has a few more weeks before he's done with the first draft that he has to submit to the publisher on the crypt. After that, there's going to be more GFL7, more crypt, all that jazz.
And, God, I cannot get the angles down. It's all goofy tonight. Hopefully it wasn't me messing with the angles that made everything start to go floopy-doop. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we are now...
I think we are. We're sort of done for this week.
So, go ahead,
if
baby.
you sent in questions that we didn't get to tonight, feel free to send them in again if you would like. But I think I have them. We just ran out of time, and I will continue to read them on Q&As during SIGLERinPLACE. If you have any questions about anything, any problems, email info@emptyset. That's the best way to get me to answer you. I am terrible at Facebook
We
and
will
Instagram.
be back on Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, which is National Wine Day and George Starcher Towel Day. So there we go. So there will be some wine consumed. I'm not a big wine drinker, but
what about bubbles?
we got to have some bubbles. But there
And
you go.
until then, as ever, you guys, we need you to stay safe.
And we need you to stay smart.
We absolutely need you to stay science.
And for the love of science, we need you to stay informed. And now my voice is shot from all of this, all the chocolate and stuff.
We love you guys.
And now we're going to kiss up in the sky.